For Kruger Media's Polity, I'm Leandi Korfer. Writer, strategist, researcher and life coach Didi Moyle joins me in studio to discuss her book, Speaking Truth to Power, telling the story of ordinary people who did some extraordinary things at a difficult time to improve the lives of those living with HIV/AIDS. Welcome, Didi.
Thank you.
In your book, Speaking Truth to Power, you tell the story of the AIDS Law Project, or ALP. Can you give me a brief overview of this organization and how it came about?
It was a small NGO that was established at Wits University by Edwin Cameron. He was concerned about the discrimination that people living with HIV and AIDS were suffering at that time in the late 1990s, particularly mine workers who, once they were, the mine owners discovered that they were HIV positive, sent them back. And they lost their jobs, they lost all security. So Edwin started this as a very small organization, basically as a legal aid organization. And over the years, it grew into a substantial, almost alternative legal practice called the AIDS Law Project. It left Wits University and in 2010 broadened its scope and is today Section 27.
And then what were the main actions taken by the ALP to bring about the current legal environment relating to the rights of people living with HIV/AIDS?
In the early years, a lot of their work was about law reform. It took place at the same time as our transition to democracy. So there was an overhauling of most legislation in South Africa to end our apartheid past. But I think perhaps the most significant process was the development of our Constitution and the Bill of Rights. It was particularly the Constitution and the Bill of Rights that gave the platform for the ALP to engage with the law, different departments in government, to make sure that there was the protection and the safeguarding of people living with HIV and AIDS against discrimination, particularly in the workplace.
And then in your book, you mentioned that the battle was not only fought in court, but awareness was also created among the greater public. How was that achieved, and what's the importance of having a country fully aware of the challenges of HIV and AIDS?
Well, in the beginning, it was a reformist work in terms of changing laws. But when it emerged that there was going to be problems with treatment, the ALP rethought what it was doing and how it was doing it. And a lot of the people who were in the leadership of the AIDS Law Project were very instrumental in establishing the Treatment Action Campaign. And for a period between 2000 and 2008, it was virtually impossible to tell the two organizations apart. And for them to win the battle, they had to win the hearts and minds of South Africans, as they faced tremendous opposition, particularly from Thabo Mbeki and the Minister of Health, at that time, Shabalala Msimang, against treatment. So it became it was a battle that they had to win amongst the hearts and minds of South Africans and also amongst the media. And the critical aspect of it was to educate all of us about what HIV and AIDS really are about.
And then, in addition to this education, what role did they play specifically in making antiretroviral treatment more widely available to people who need it?
Well, in the initial meetings when they sat down and established the Treatment Action Campaign, one of the first things that they decided was to focus particularly on the prevention of mother-to-child transmission. At that stage, the transmission rates were over 27%. Of HIV-positive women were giving birth to HIV-positive children. And one of the things that they thought people would understand was this was actually preventable. It was preventable with a single dose of nevirapine. And the costs of that, as opposed to the health costs of generations of sick infants and mothers, is just incalculable. And that was the reason why they said, look, this is where we're going to start this battle. And it was a long battle getting into court. And ultimately, they were victorious in 2002 because in the Constitutional Court, they had won in the High Court in Pretoria a number of rounds which Mantu Shabalala Msimang appealed at every turn. But at that stage, by 2002, there was also a greater feeling within the ANC that the dominant position, the position of Thabo Mbeki, was wrong. And so people in the ANC started to say, maybe we must rethink this. And the government said that they would roll out antiretrovirals. But it took another 5 years for it to really happen. It only really started moving in 2007, 2008.
And then what impact did the rollout of antiretrovirals have on age-related death and mother-to-child transmissions? Can you give us some statistics on how it went down?
Well, it's profound. The first, I can give you 3 sets of statistics. Life expectancy in South Africa has gone from 54 to 61. That is substantial. One of the leading AIDS researchers, Professor Salim Karim, says that kind of change in a generation only happens from a huge social event like the end of slavery. So that is a very profound change. The other thing is that the transmission rates from mother to child is now down to 2.7%. And well, that was in the last statistics that I saw in 2012. So they're going down even further. So this gives us the hope that there might be an AIDS-free generation in this country, which is really something that we should all fight for.
And then, despite the strides that have been made, South Africa is still faced with a significant challenge in terms of HIV and AIDS. What challenge does this book pose to lawyers, activists, and the country as a whole moving forward?
I think there are a number, but the one that's most relevant to this book is how we must fight and respect and guard our Constitution, because it's our Constitution that gives people rights. It's our Constitution that makes us a fair, democratic country, and it's a Constitution that gives us a vision for the future, a vision for a better South Africa, which is the one that we need to work for. And I think in terms of this book, there's a lot of things that need to be done about HIV/AIDS, about making treatment easier, and also making sure that we get the transmission rates down. And there's more work done on prevention. But in terms of the story I tell, it's about we must preserve our human rights culture, and we must work for social justice, because it's social justice that will build a stronger and better South Africa.
And then what are some of the specific ways that people today can use the Constitution to fight for their rights?
Oh, I think there are a whole lot of ways. I think what Section 27 does, because the Section 27 of our Constitution, where the social economic rights are, and by broadening their base and the work that they are doing, they're moving beyond just health, and they're looking at issues like education. They've done very profound work on making sure that school books textbooks are available, particularly in Limpopo and the Eastern Cape, where there are severe education problems. They're also looking at housing. So it's about, these are the issues. If we want to build a better South Africa, these are the areas where we have to work.
And then lastly, can you just tell me a bit, why did the ALP decide to move away from only healthcare and transform itself into Section 27, and how did this change happen?
They'd started talking about it from about 2008 to 2009. Once there was a commitment by government to roll out antiretrovirals. The change started to come in about 2007, but by the time Barbara Hogan became the Minister of Health, there was a change. It was a sea change that took place when Thabo Mbeki was recalled, and a lot of the impediments against rolling out the operation plan were taken away. And so from there, the ALP started to think about there are other issues that we also need to be involved in. They had established the platform so that there was a platform that protected people's rights against discrimination. There was a process that gave people access to treatment. And so they started looking more broadly at the other socio-economic rights within the Constitution.
Thank you so much, Didi. That was Didi Moyle speaking to Creamer Media's Polity about her book, Speaking Truth to Power.